These ER actors dealt with death and disease every week, but they faced their own health struggles off camera that you may not have heard about. Throughout the 15 seasons that ER ran, several episodes involved family members of characters and subplots that would weave their way throughout the series. But one instance turned out to be the real deal when singer Rosemary Clooney shared screen time with her famous nephew, George Clooney. The opportunity took place during 2 episodes in the hospital drama's inaugural season when she played a patient who leaves the emergency unit only to be found singing in the streets of Chicago. The role earned her an Emmy nomination. Rosemary had already generated her own notoriety in her career though, starting with vocalizing the sultry 1951 hit, Come On at My House, which led to a Paramount deal involving 4 pictures, including White Christmas. However, Rosemary's recording and movie career was short-lived. She soon retired after she married director and actor Jose Ferrer, with whom she raised 5 children. They eventually divorced, and Rosemary tried to stage a comeback, which ultimately failed due to the mental illness that affected her for most of her life. She once said to the Ladies' Home Journal, "Many people live in mental anguish but refuse to seek help because of the stigma attached." Rosemary sadly died of lung cancer when she was 74. George credited Rosemary for him staying on the straight and narrow, telling the Calgary Sun, "My aunt taught me a lot by example about what mistakes not to make, because she made them all." George Plimpton had no acting background, and it's safe to say he was hardly a thespian, but he scored a few gigs in front of the camera throughout his career. Though his greater notoriety was as a Harvard-educated writer and journalist, he also made a name for himself as someone who'd get as close to the front lines of a story or sporting event as possible, wading into the middle of the action whenever he could. The former Sports Illustrated scribe and occasional Playboy magazine contributor managed to take on heavyweight boxing champion Archie Moore in a 3-round match, and hit the field for a few innings of Major League Baseball exhibition matches. But he was most notorious for convincing the NFL's Detroit Lions to allow him to take part in a football game for a series of downs as quarterback, an experience he related in his book Paper Lion. Plimpton said being on the inside gave him a journalistic advantage, telling NPR, "What surprised me the most were the intimate details that are sort of part of the fabric of professional football that reporters really don't know about." Acting was far less dangerous for him, and Plimpton managed to appear in 2 episodes of ER, and cameoed on sitcoms like Just Shoot Me and Wings, and even appeared in the 1997 film Good Will Hunting. He also portrayed a satirization of himself on The Simpsons, which was his final role before he died at 76 of heart problems. Tom Poston was a natural as a simpleton out of his element, an attribute that got him a major break on the 50s outing The Steve Allen Show, which scored him an Emmy. That victory boosted his stock, and it wasn't long before he was in demand for such live productions as A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, Bye Bye Birdie, and Fiddler on the Roof. But it was also a gosh darn demeanor that endeared audiences years later to the comedic actor best remembered as George Utley, the dull-witted but good-natured caretaker of a Martha's Vineyard Inn on Newhart. Poston recalled how the producers pulled back on the goofiness of the character.
They didn't want him to be so totally inept, and they thought it would be kind of jokey and hokey. So they pulled way back.
His absent-mindedness came in handy on other sitcoms as well, including Will and Grace, That 70s Show, Murphy Brown, and Just Shoot Me. He also came close to the Utley character when he played a school custodian on Family Matters. But it was during 2 episodes of ER during its 7th season that viewers caught a different side of the actor, who originally cut his teeth in drama via Broadway productions of Cyrano de Bergerac and King Lear back in the 50s. Poston was 85 when he died after a short illness. During 2 episodes of ER, Tom Bosley paired up with Newhart star Tom Poston to play a couple of sarcastic seniors, a scenario that might have been out of character for someone who portrayed one of the most reasonable TV dads in pop culture history. To fans, Bosley was Mr. C, aka Howard Cunningham, the kind yet grounded patriarch on the retro comedy Happy Days. Revisiting a post-war period when rock and roll was in its infancy, the 70s sitcom placed Cunningham as a moralistic yet amenable guiding force to the more youthful and restless characters. from his son Richie to flamboyant mechanic Arthur Fonzarelli. More than a decade later, Bosley would play an entirely different father, a priest with a thirst for solving crimes in the drama Father Dowling Mysteries. He'd often play reminders of his Happy Days role, including a guest appearance on yet another retro sitcom, That 70s Show, and a satirized Mr. C cameo on Family Guy. But to colleagues, he was a model actor and human being. Ron Howard told the Los Angeles Times, "A great father and husband and a wonderful artist, Tom led by example and made us all laugh while he was doing it. My last conversations with Tom reflected the love of life and peace of mind that he always maintained throughout his full and rewarding life. I miss him already." Bosley died at 83 of lung cancer. One of Hollywood's most versatile figures, Garry Marshall was best known for being a juggernaut creative force as a director, writer, and the producer behind such hit shows as The Odd Couple, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, and Mork and Mindy, all of which ruled primetime television for decades. For all that impact on pop culture, Marshall never won an Emmy Award, despite being nominated 4 times.
There's no crying! There's no crying in baseball!
When it came to movies, Marshall received little more than goose eggs for his work on successful productions that included A League of Their Own, Pretty Woman, and The Princess Diaries. Perhaps he was too busy to notice these omissions among his prolific output. It certainly explains why he seldom took on projects as an actor. Still, he managed one cameo on ER as a senior. He wasn't exactly a fixture on the screen, but he did manage to snag coveted roles on other TV shows, including 2.5 Men, Murphy Brown, and a 2016 remake of The Odd Couple, his final contribution as an actor. While not exactly a darling among critics, the New York Times, noting his passing from a stroke at 81, described Marshall as a comedy mastermind and added, "He consistently found the sweet spot smack dab in the middle of the mainstream." More heartfelt was one tweet by Happy Days alum Henry Winkler, who thanked Marshall for his professional life as well as his loyalty, friendship, and generosity. Charlotte Rae was a breath of fresh air to fans of Different Strokes and The Facts of Life, as caregiver and house mother Edna Garrett. Her first charges were 2 adopted children of a well-to-do businessman. She then took on the same role at a boarding school overseeing the lives of 4 reluctant but impressionable students. Her goofiness made her endearing to viewers, although she wasn't afraid to play the morality card when topics from teenage pregnancy to alcohol abuse surfaced on the latter series. Rae first emerged in the public eye performing live theater on the small screen when television was still in its infancy, before landing roles in early TV classics like Car 54 Where Are You? And The Defenders. She also landed numerous bit parts, like when she played Molly the Mail Lady during the early years of Sesame Street. Her genre-crossing acting skills enabled her to star in 4 episodes of ER and other primetime fodder like Sisters and The King of Queens. Her later years saw her venture more toward voiceover work on animated projects like The Itsy Bitsy Spider and 101 Dalmatians the series.
That gets funnier every day!
More remarkably, Rae managed to work when she became seriously ill. She faced pancreatic cancer and later bone cancer, with the latter eventually ending her life at 92. Colleagues mourned her loss, including Different Strokes star Todd Bridges, who said of Rae, "You were loved by everyone on our show, and you were loved by everyone on The Facts of Life. Rest in peace, my friend." While Henry Fonda and his daughter Jane Fonda have long been lauded by the Hollywood establishment for their work in a bevy of blockbusters, his son Peter Fonda instead carved a niche for himself as an icon of the hippie counterculture during the 60s and 70s. Peter's most popular work remains the Oscar-nominated 1969 classic Easy Rider, which chronicled a motorcycle trip across America with two-wheeling buddy Dennis Hopper that doesn't end well for either of them. Unlike his character Wyatt, Peter still managed to pack his rebellious following into soft-seaters with outlaw-oriented outings like The Hired Hand and Dirty Mary Crazy Larry. In 1998, Peter's rebellious traits, this time as a fiercely independent beekeeper in Yuli's Gold, were recognized once again by the Oscar Brain Trust, which nominated him for a Best Actor award.
Or that was my father telling me, don't get too cocky.
Yeah.
If the roles Peter picked weren't defiant, they would certainly be quirky bits, like his only guest spot in ER as Pierce Tanner, a man who runs into someone from his past while visiting the hospital to see his wife, the victim of a car accident. He also played a cartel heavy in The Blacklist, and himself in the arcane David Duchovny comedy Californication. Peter sadly died of lung cancer at 79. His sister Jane said in a statement, "I am very sad. He was my sweethearted baby brother, the talker of the family. I have had beautiful alone time with him these last days. He went out laughing." John Mahoney portrayed a gay character in one ER episode from 2006. The Offering, dubbed Somebody to Love, saw Mahoney battle his partner's family over his partner's welfare surrounding a serious heart condition. It was the humanitarianism that Mahoney brought to his portrayals, especially when they clashed with the attitudes of his counterparts, that endeared him to viewers. Fans of the sitcom Frasier saw that element in Mahoney all the time. As disabled ex-cop Martin Crane, he used his meat and potatoes logic to bring his erudite sons Frasier and Niles back down to earth whenever their pretensions started to spin out of orbit. For those efforts, he earned 2 Emmy nominations. Mahoney's humanitarianism may have come naturally, or the extensive training he received at Chicago's Steppenwolf Theater, where he was an onstage regular for nearly 40 years, may have helped develop the skill. The former magazine editor and English teacher eventually found his footing in New York, where he nabbed a Tony Award for his work in The House of Blue Leaves, a production that PBS later aired. In the movies, he found himself cast in father roles that exposed him to larger audiences via performances in Moonstruck and Say Anything. Those patriarchal portrayals likely rubbed off on his cast. After hearing of Mahoney's death from cancer complications at 77, Kelsey Grammer said, "He was my father. I loved him."